Hi, and welcome to another episode of Brew Talk. I am your host, Eric Robert, and with me today is Kieran Buzek from Dog Brewery. Welcome, Kieran.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear about Dog Brewery and how you have grown as the only man running the show to what you have become today. But I can't do that. Not yet.
You need a beer first.
We need a beer first. Our glasses are empty.
Let's fill them up.
We have to have full. Oh, look at this.
Yes. So we are going to start off with Blue Bronco IPA. And I can now actually set the record straight because everyone always thinks all the time being like, oh, Blue Bronco is like rip off from White Bronco and Sandwich. No, it's not.
Nothing against Sandwich.
No, nothing against Sandwich. It's a great beer. I just actually have a 1982 Ford Bronco. So I named my biggest and baddest beer after the truck.
And there it is there for those who have not seen the wonderful label on this can, the Blue Bronco. So
cheers.
Cheers. All right. Very good.
Yeah, start off with the 7% beer.
Yeah, all right. That's, I mean,
we might as well.
We both probably had a couple at work today too. Well, at least I do. You being the owner of Dog Brewery, no one can tell you no. You can't drink.
I can taste test at 8 a.m. if I want, 9 a.m. whenever I feel like it.
We all do.
Yeah. Secretly, we all do.
Part of the life, yeah. So like every episode of Brew Talk, the reason why we're here is to hear your story and where you came from, why you got into brewing. So with that, I mean, we might as well start right from the top. Who are you? Why are you here? Tell me what got you to start up your own brewery, your own business? You're the first one that I've had on that is the everything guy of his own brewery. So most of the time it's just been these lowly brewers who do what their bosses tell them to do. But you are the man. So
yeah, my story is quite unique, which I think everybody's story is quite unique when they first start. Back in the day, back in say high schoolish, I was always thinking about something to do. I always want to do something more like entrepreneurial. And, like grade 11, 12, you start having a couple beers. Your parents give you some here and there. And I always thought it'd be cool to do maybe like work for a beer company, or I was big into cars. I am big into cars. Do something with car manufacturer, or then even do something with sports since I'm a big baseball guy. So it's just funny that at the time beer was on one of the things. And lo and behold, I'm now here today doing this. So then fast forward to roughly third year university. Like throughout university, I didn't drink anything for craft beer. I've only been drinking craft beer for the past 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
And it's almost kind of just like by mistake, essentially. So it's third year university, playing baseball at Micmac Park. And one of my buddies is like, hey, why don't after games, let's go out and let's have a couple beers somewhere. So since we're at Micmac Park on the west side of Windsor, we decided to go into Sandwich Town. And so we go to Rock Bottom a couple times. They've had all craft beers on tap.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until one day we went into Barrel House, and all Barrel House had on tap was all craft beer. And my first craft beer I ever had was Bo's Lug Tread.
Nice.
Which I think that's probably everybody's first craft beer since
they were around. It's a classic.
Yeah. So then we started going there more often, and I actually became really good friends with the bartender there, Mr. James Kemet. So shout out to James. And he was the guy that was like, hey, you got to try this. So every time I went in there, he started giving me different craft beers. So started off with drinking like Bo's Lug Tread. Then I went to different pale ales, stouts, or double IPAs.
Yeah.
And my absolute favorite beer at that time, which actually inspired Blue Bronco, was the Immodest Imperial IPA by Nickelbrook.
Okay.
And phenomenal beer. It's like 9% beer, but drank like a 4% beer. So that definitely inspired Blue Bronco. I wanted to make strong IPA, kind of a little bit thinner body, but still had a nice punch to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So just going there and drinking a bunch of different beers. That was third year. Going into fourth year university, we had to take a strategic management course. So it was like a capstone course, and everybody had to take it. So it was in the final semester, and we had to create a business with a group. So there was about 3 or 4 of us in our group. And at that time, well, it's still kind of big today, but Tinder was around. Yeah. So I was like, well, we have all these great wineries around here. Why don't we create an app that instead of you searching for a partner, you search for local wines? So I was like, all right, let's set it up where you go on, you put your preferences in, and then after you can pick different wines, and different local wineries will pop up. And then after you can find out info about them, where I'll get them. So at the time, I thought it was a pretty good idea, and the group members liked it. I think we got like a 90 or so on the project, which was pretty cool. And after that course was done, I actually approached different wineries, and they weren't too hot on it. But that was something that kind of like got the juices flowing, and like the entrepreneurial spirit kind of going. So from after doing that, I had an idea of maybe starting like a craft beer tour.
Okay.
So I actually went to Toronto for a day, and I met a gentleman there who runs a whole craft beer tour, and he kind of gave me like the lows, highs and lows of everything, and actually went on this tour for the day. And during this whole time, I was still going to Barrel House, like drinking craft beers. I'm a regular at this time, going like 3-4 days a week, and just trying so many different things. And I went.
You're the reason they rotated kegs so often.
Yeah, I don't want to say it, but yeah, possibly. But I thought about doing like a craft beer tour, and I was like, I don't know. I wasn't totally like fully into it. And then it was all of a sudden, it was one night at Barrel House and drinking a bunch of craft beers. I think I was there till close, me and my buddy just talking.
The things we think of after our 4th double IPA.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was a double IPA night that night for sure. So it's like 2-3 in the morning. I ended up getting to ride home, and I get home and I'm just laying in bed, and I was like, why don't I learn how to brew beer? So I kind of get out of bed there, go to my desk, grab my computer, jump back into bed, and I just start searching like how to brew beer. And obviously the first thing comes up is John Palmer's book, which I think everybody has always read, How to Brew. So I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem like too bad. Like, I think I could possibly do this. So then
making a big pot of tea. How
hard can it be, really? So started reading that a little bit, and that night too, went on Amazon and bought a bunch of books. So I spent probably like $100, bought a bunch of books on Amazon, basically just kind of how to brew. So waited for all those to come in, and it was about a 6-month period or so where I just read. Like every day after work, came home, was reading. And the great thing is obviously with internet that there's so many articles and so many things out there, YouTube videos of how to do everything. So I just kept on researching, and slowly during this time started like procure my own equipment and go out. We had Kijiji, which we still use Kijiji to this day, but went on there and find like a burner. Then I'd find like a mash tun, find a bunch of stuff. And then I got one of my buddies, he had a keg in his garage, and we took it and we cut a hole in it, and I made my first keggle.
There we are.
Welded some handles on it. I still got it. It actually leaked in 1.2, which was kind of funny, the first batch was doing. But it was February of 2017 where I did my first batch, and I started in my parents' garage. So started in my parents' garage that day, and it was really weird. I got a phone call, and it was on a Sunday too, out of all days. I look at it, it's like University of Windsor. I'm like, hey, this is weird for university to be calling me like on a Sunday. And I just graduated that past April, May.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, yeah, we're just like calling in to see how you're doing with your degree. And I'm just like looking around being like, should I tell them I'm brewing beer in my parents' garage right now? Like, I feel like this is kind of a weird thing. And I was like, no, I was working at a local credit union at the time. So I just told them that. I'm like, okay, good. And so then after that, I was looking around being like, hey, this is kind of cool. And also kind of weird that I just got this phone call. So let that batch sit, let that batch ferment for, I think what we did at the time, 2-3 weeks. But even before then, actually, I should have said it before, bought a pack from Jake's.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the pale ale.
Okay.
So shout out to Jake's.
Shout out to Jake's Windsor Brew.
If Jake's wasn't around, I would not be here at all.
I started there too. We so many home brewers in the area, right? We're the only home brew shop.
We're so lucky to have Jake's there. Awesome. And it was just like the pale ale. So I brewed that, took it, put it in my parents' front foyer closet, let it ferment. And then after that, do the bottle bucket, put your priming sugar, do all that fun stuff. And as I mentioned before, I was working at a local credit union at the time, and we had to work Sundays, 10 to 2, which I also worked there with a good buddy. And this good buddy of mine was the guy that, like, if you made something or for me making beer, like, he would tell me if it was bad.
This is trash.
Yeah, he would tell me straight up. He's not a person that would just, like, drink it and be like, yeah, it was good. Like, he would tell me straight up.
Yeah, you shouldn't do this anymore.
No.
But this one's fine.
Yeah. So it was on a Sunday, and, like, the place was completely dead, and I brought some beers. Like, hey, like, you got to try this, is what I made. And he's like, he was like, okay, sure, whatever, we'll try it.
During working hours, or?
I think it was.
We won't talk about what credit unit
that. Yeah,
it was.
No. Yeah, I think it was only one. It was only one. So they crack it open, we're drinking the desk, and he goes, man, this is actually pretty good. So essentially after that, I was like, okay, I think I'm kind of onto something. So then just continued growing from there and kept on brewing at my parents' place, and then eventually outgrew that spot, went over to my grandparents' place, had a little kind of like side brewery in one of the garages. And then at that time, we're actually building the future brewery of where it's at today.
Okay. And that's where you are now, in your grandparents' place.
Yeah.
So right on. And in there, you brew your small batch, right? Your 3 barrel, 2 barrel?
I am currently right now still using my pilot system, which is 3/4 of a barrel. So I double batch a barrel and a half.
Right.
But my new system is right around 3 barrels.
Okay, right
Which
on.
hopefully I'll have it up by the wintertime, which would be great.
So that being said, you don't actually have a tap room out of this space. So where would the lovely people who listen to this podcast be able to find your beer?
So right now, well, since I started, I've been in about 17, 18 different bars and restaurants. So right now, Verns and Kingsville's got Blue Bronco IPA. El Diablo and Kingsville's got Uno Mas Mexican Dark Lager, which I do one specifically for them. Crave and Leamington, they've been a great supporter since I started. They've been carrying all my stuff. Billy's in Essex, Woodcraft in Essex.
Yeah.
Springwell out in Windsor, Erie Street Gastro Pub has had a bunch of stuff. So kind of a little spread out all around the county, which has been pretty cool.
Nice. So anyone who's listening, it sounds like you're mostly located Kingsville, Leamington. So
More in the county so far right now. Yeah. I've slowly been expanding out, going into Windsor in the summer, especially busy with different events. I didn't really want to commit to different places and then say, oh, sorry, like I ran out of beer.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that those are actually a fair amount of places to keep beer going, but you again, we can touch on this. Is you're a one man show. Like you brew, you package. Excuse me, you brew, you package, you do it all. The fun stuff, the not fun stuff. I mean,
most of it's not fun stuff.
No, God, I hate cleaning. God, I mean that's about 65% of brewing.
I hate doing the taxes too.
Oh, like everything you do, the whole show, one man show. Well, that's, I mean, you know what? Good for you to be able to push through that and keep a regular rotation of fine tasting beer.
I think it also makes it quite unique too. Just from the fact that since I am overseeing absolutely everything there, that like I know all the costs of like what my grain is, what my hops are, what my yeast is, all the taxes, which every brewer knows exactly what they're for tax. But I'm looking at it from, all right, I want to brew awesome, great beer, but I also don't want to be spending a ton of money on ingredients. We all want to brew that beer that's like 5 different hops,
of course,
10%, but it's just not feasible to do. So I'm looking at it where, especially when I first started, how am I going to scale up these beers? And it was honestly from like the second batch, I was already thinking about, okay, how am I going to scale these up? What beers are going to work? What also kind of hops you could say are interchangeable between beers, and also what grains are kind of interchangeable between beers? Because as we know, yeast is the biggest factor for beer flavor. You only use about 3 or 4 different yeast strains because, again, we'd love to have 5, 6, 7 yeast strains, but to be able to go through rotation with that many, you just can't do it, especially on the small batch scale.
Yeah.
And I actually choose to use all Kvike style or Kvike style yeasts in the brewery.
Okay.
Just from the fact that they're awesome, number one, but they just ferment so quickly. And I think every brewery on a small scale, any small batch brewery, should be using them as much as they can because beer sitting in a tank is time, and time is money.
Real estate, you need that. You need those space.
So if you can turn over a beer over in 5, 6 days, like there's been different beers where I've pushed it, and I know all these strains by now where it's like, okay, I know this beer will ferment in 2 days. I could brew it on a Monday and be drinking it on a Friday. Yeah. Which is just insane to think about. Yeah. Like not something we would think about 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah. And for all those home brewers that are out there wondering, all those Kvike strains are available on a smaller scale. So
Scarman Labs.
If you want to if you want to get yourself brewing on a Monday and drinking on a Tuesday, get a Kvike strain for sure.
They're phenomenal.
I haven't used them too much, but I have done a few beers with them, and the flavors that they put off are just outstanding. Like some of them, you don't even need hops. I mean, like obviously I'm being a little over the top, but like just the citrus flavors that you can get out of yeast, it's just so wild.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that actually like accentuate the hop flavor a lot, but it's also now there's a lot of ones that are actually like pretty clean. So I use 2 of them in the brewery, Crusher and Crispy, and I get all of them all from Scarman Labs. Yeah. And Crispy is almost like your pseudo lager, where you actually get clean lager-like profiles from a beer that fermented at 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
And then Crusher is almost like your clean Cali as well, where I use in different kind of like ambers and stouts, and it can ferment at 9500 degrees. And you're thinking in that time, okay, you're probably gonna get more of a citrusy profile to it, but you don't whatsoever. It just stays clean and crisp, which is awesome.
What a cool yeast strain. I really dig that. Now you said when you started, you jumped right in. You right to the grains right out of the gates, eh? So no extract brewing at all?
Nope, just jumped in right in all grain. I think I just did it because I kind of trusted my knowledge at the time of only brewing for 6 months, like just the basics of it. Where like I guess I was immersing myself every single day, like watching YouTube videos, and I was like, you know, if I'm going to do this, let's just go with all grain right away. It's an extra couple $100 to get that equipment to do all grain, so let's just jump in right away and do it.
Absolutely. The nice thing about about doing that is your world opens up so much more, right? When you start getting into, even when guys come into the shop and they start talking about wanting to learn how to brew, and I point them in the direction of, if you wanted to do it now and make beer and not really screw yourself over too much, you can get extract, but if you're really looking to expand your flavor profiles, you go into the all grain.
And it's so easy nowadays too. Like, especially with the equipment out there. Like if I had a Brewzilla when I first started brewing, man, it would be insane. Yeah. And I'll have a lot of people come up, especially with doing events, that they're like, oh, like it must be hard to brew beer. And I'm like, it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's really not that difficult to brew. There is a difference though between making like good beer and great beer when you start getting more in the scientific aspects of it, and especially changing your water profiles and using different grains and hops. And we can talk about this for hours, but anybody can make good beer.
Yeah. Not to scare people who are thinking about getting into brewing, scare you away, but you're absolutely right. With the right knowledge and very little knowledge, you can make decent, drinkable, passable beer that you can bring to your friends and drink on the clock.
Just go to Jake's and bug Eric.
That's right. Yeah. There's
he'll teach you everything you know.
Yeah. This guy there named Eric, he knows a thing or two about brewing. So if anyone wants to, find out more about your story, they probably could find a website. You got a website?
Topdogbrew.ca.
Topdogbrew.ca.
You can order beer on there, get it shipped right to your door. Or you can go to Leah Maria's in Kingsville. They're actually kind of like since I don't have a tap room that's open 24/7, they're essentially like my exclusive retail store.
Okay.
So they're open 7 days a week there, and go in there, ask for Top Dog, and they'll bring you some cans out.
Nice. Awesome. So there's a big story of where you came from, but we want to know more. We want to break these walls down and really find out what makes you you. When it comes to brewing, obviously, like you said, yeast is a big important factor in your game. We all know brewers make yeast makes beer, but what is it that really separates brewing for you? Do you prefer messing around with more hops? Like you said, we would all like to have these beers that have 5-6 different hops in them. Is that the part that captivates you when it comes to recipe building, or are you more on the yeast strain of things? If you were to experiment and pull yourself away from your normal flagship beers that you brew,
I think the biggest thing is trying to have different flavor profiles like throughout your palate, where you could say almost kind of like pyramiding in different flavors. And like there's so many different things nowadays when it comes to hops, where it's like, oh, well, if you add like a 30-minute edition, a 15, a 10, a 5, you're going to get so much of a different hop flavor profile. But you can also do the same thing with grains, and using that with different grains, trying to see which ones work the best and also which ones bring out the different flavor profiles. So trying to experiment things, like I usually just try to go off the wall with anything that I'm going to do that's kind of different. Like for Masters of the Brewniverse this year, did which I can't believe this one. People like this.
I know. Oh, yeah, I loved it. It was so. It was
funny. As we're getting there with one of my buddies, I'm like, if people come up to me and tell me they really like the Michelada, I'm just going to be like, all right, I'm just going to leave right now.
I'm done brewing.
Done brewing. And the first thing comes up is Eric comes up and be like, I really like the Michelada.
The Michelada beer.
I'm like, man, that's
it was a Caesar beer. It was insane. And it wasn't just me. Like the whole group that I was there with, they kept coming up to me and going like, I don't know that you're going to win this. If this Michelada beer is as good as we think it is, I think someone else might have a tug at this. It was such a different flavor profile. Like to take a sip of it and think that it's going to be beer was one thing, but it was like I literally felt like I was drinking a carbonated Caesar. It was just
that's essentially what it was.
It was a very unique flavor.
That's the funnest part about brewing, like especially now, being you could say not a professional brewer, but doing this full time and having so many different beers that are at different licensees and trying to keep up your core beers all the time. You kind of don't have as much time to experiment, but it was fun to have that because then that was like, all right, I'm going to do something that's like off the wall.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing and the biggest next step whenever the day comes where I can hire another employee to come on and they can kind of brew the cores. And that's like, all right, let's start experimenting more. Because that's really the fun
of all of
it.
Do you, now that being said, aside from like competitions or festivals, do you find that you have time to maybe experiment once in a while, or are you just at the point now where you're just turning over your beers?
Right now, it's kind of just turning over most of the stuff. I have experimented with a little bit of different things this year, and there's a couple of winter beers that I'm going to experiment with a bunch too. But it was a couple of years ago. I actually was at Innocente Brewing Company, I think in Cambridge, and I don't know, I could say 2-3 years ago, like everyone was always just trying to do something like off the wall. Yeah. Everyone wanted to do something that was different they never heard of, which I love, which is awesome, which everybody loves. Like as craft beer drinker, you want to try something that's totally different.
There's a few of those craft brew brewers out there who would disagree, but
but there was got to this brewery and was talking to one of the owners there, and he goes, like the one biggest thing. And I asked him, like, what was like one advice you can give me? And he goes, the biggest thing is to ensure that your core beers are fantastic all the time, because that's essentially what's going to be bringing everybody into your brewery, is having good core staple beers. So at the time I was like, yeah, okay, like whatever. But then now looking at it and looking back at it, it goes, yeah, for sure, he's right. Because those are the beers that you're going to have at all your different licensees. And that's going to be beer that if someone's like, all right, this person makes a really good IPA. Well, I'm going to go to their brewery and check out and see what other IPAs they have as well. Or if they're into lagers, ambers, whatever it is. And that kind of really draws people in by ensuring and making those core beers awesome.
Yeah. And especially for, first time triers of your beer, to have them go into a restaurant, order a beer. I've never heard of this place before, or I've never tried this guy's beer, and to get it and it's not very good, then like when you've got all these other licensees, they're going to see your name and go, I had that one beer that one time and it wasn't good. And it wasn't good.
That's where I'm kind of handcuffed at times, since I don't have a tap room at this very moment, but I can't really go nuts and experiment with a lot, because then it's like I'm going to a licensee and I'm like, okay, you need to put like this smoked maple bacon beer on tap. And they're looking at me like, well, no, like that's not going to fly with us.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, no, we want kind of your other staples, your other kind of, not clean beers, but your other IPAs, watermelon beers, whatever it is.
Yeah. I know myself when I go into a brewery, especially, if I'm going to a brewery where they make everything in house, to look at what's there. I'm sacrilegious. I grab an IPA, give me something that I want to drink, where you yourself, we were talking about it beforehand. You're kind of the opposite of that, is you jump right in.
For sure. Go for an IPA after, but the first beer I always usually try is, I always want to try one of their lagers.
Yeah.
And just for the fact that there's nothing to hide behind a lager.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you have to ensure your brewing process from start to finish is immaculate.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, there's going to be enough flavor in that beer.
Yeah.
And so when I go to different places, that's the first beer I order. And I'm like, okay, if they make a really good lager, it's clean, it's crisp, it's good, then I'm like, okay, I'm sure I'll like their other stuff as well. But that's just kind of like the first test. And I'm sure most brewers would agree with that as well.
I do as well. Yeah. Half the time I walk in and I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to spend $15 in a couple of beers. I'm going to drink what I want. The lagers are fine, but give me the 8.5. I'm getting my money's worth. I'm paying for the 10% alcohol. Beers. Exactly.
Yeah. Which there are a lot of breweries that like that. I was in Columbus in 2019 and went to one brewery called Hoof Hearted, and they had, all their beers were all IPAs.
Okay.
And like their one mainstay beer was their IPL. And it was awesome, but it was like 8%.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like you're going to go into this place and have 2 beers and already have a pretty good buzz.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, all right, hey, if that's what they're doing, it seems to be working for them.
As long as you got the people coming in and out the door, that you're still selling beers, right? Because I know, like myself, I would rather have someone stick around and drink 5 beers.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll run a poker tournament in the back or something. So
euchre, maybe something.
Yeah. Oh, euchre tournament. Ooh, it's been a while. I don't know if in the brewing industry here, the age group, I suppose that we are, euchre is probably close enough. But on top of the many breweries that you visit, because you don't have a tap room, you yourself are very involved in festivals, and you travel a fair distance to get your name out there. Do you have like dog tags of all the festivals you've been to, a big list, or?
Yeah, somewhat. Like this year. So I've only been open now legally for a year, since last July. So obviously last summer wasn't great for anybody.
Right.
Wintertime wasn't great for anybody. So this is actually the first year we actually do a lot of things. So I kind of looked at it. We're like, all right, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And I did open streets in Kingsville for 6 or 7 weeks, which was awesome, which is crazy. Like being in Kingsville, people are like, where are you from? I'm like, yeah, I'm in Kingsville. They're like, where in Kingsville? And I tell them, and they're like, oh, wow, we didn't even know. But I went out to the Great Ontario Beer Festival in Waterloo in June.
Yeah.
And it was a super cool moment for me, especially just because at this festival, there's like 40 or 50 different breweries there. All breweries too that are like top notch in Ontario, and then like there's me.
Yeah.
And it was almost kind of like a surreal moment, because I'm like, I was thinking about this 4 or 5 years ago, going to festivals, like, oh, it'd be awesome to like do something like this. So doing festivals for me is fun, just because it's a great experience for everybody, and you get to meet so many different people.
Yeah.
And I brought a couple of my buddies with me too, and I kind of gave them the crash course of like, all right, this is the different tasting notes of everything, and they did an awesome job. But it was cool meeting a lot of people, and especially there being a brewery that nobody knows, the amount of people that actually came up and like tried things, and they're like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Where can I get this?
We've never heard of you.
Yeah, where are you from? And even to this day, I'm still getting messages and emails from people up in the area being like, hey, like, where can I get your beer? I got a guy call me the other day. He lives in Kitchener, was at Rondo Park, and he's like, hey, can I drive down and get a case of watermelon for him right now? And it was like Sunday, and I was out in the golf course or something. And I'm like, oh, sorry, man. He's like, all right, like, we'll try to figure something out. I'm like, yeah, hey, if you order a bunch of beer, I'll drive up there and deliver it to you. Why not?
Absolutely, yeah. Hey, you know what? If you don't have a tap room, you still got to get this delicious liquid down customers' throats somehow. So
Yeah.
I will hand deliver it to you.
Yeah, why not?
Order 12 cases, and I'll drive it to your door.
It just gives me an excuse to go out there and experience some other breweries around.
That's it, yeah, because you never make a road trip and not,
No.
what local breweries are in the area.
No.
Do you have any like crazy wild stories or anything from these festivals? I mean, like, this is not a PG rated show, so it doesn't necessarily
Nothing too crazy. Everything's been pretty like tame this summer, I'd say, for the most part.
Yeah. That's probably for the best. It keeps things going, because I suppose if you get yourself beaten down to dust, you're gonna not want to do these anymore. So, now you said you bring a couple of buddies up with you. So that's nice that you at least have some help. When it comes to festivals, because if you're doing all these festivals every weekend, when do you find the time to brew?
Working my schedule somehow. Seems like I get a lot of people that come out and help me for festivals and then canning days.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because, canning days, there's a lot of spillage that happens when you're canning.
No.
Oh, no, this whole can just fell on the floor and somehow went into my glass.
This
no.
This glass I left on the floor is full again.
Hopefully nobody from the AGCO is going to listen to this. Because I might be in trouble if that's the case.
Shh, we don't talk about that.
We'll edit that part out, right?
That's right. Yeah, we'll take that out. So I guess, since you kind of jumped right into the homebrewer's dream of opening up your own brewery right out of the gates, do you have any like advice that to the guy who's sitting at home right now with his buddies and they're drinking his beer going, hey man, you should do this. This is pretty good beer.
Got to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
You got to be passionate about it and you got to love it. Those are the first two things. I've had different people over the years ask me like, I want to like open up a craft brewery. I'm like, well, you can't do it for money.
Yeah.
Like, yes, obviously the main goal of any business is to make money, but craft brewing is not the business to go in there to make money for, right? It's a huge capital expense to start. Like, you're spending $2 million to $3 million, not me, but $2 million to $3 million to start a brewery. Or you can do it my way where you kind of like, I found a lot of different used equipment all across Ontario and drove around and then visit all different breweries, which I would grab one of my buddies, like, hey, we're going on a beer trip.
Yeah.
Let's go. We're going to go up for 2 days, go buy this equipment in Hamilton, stay the night, go drink a bunch of beers at the breweries, and then come back. But yeah, you definitely got to love it. And there's a famous quote from Jack McAuliffe, and his quote was, your background in brewing or your knowledge of it does not matter. It's your passion and dedication.
Yeah.
So that's something that I live by.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you're right. It just comes down to the fact of just brew the beer and they will drink it. But it's more than just that too. It's you being so putting yourself out there. Like, you walk into licensees and you're like, here it is, here it is. It's amazing how many local establishments will help support local.
Yeah.
All you got to do is go out and talk to them.
Yeah,
Walk into a bar and talk to the manager and say, I can get you a keg of this. And really, to get your license, it's it's a little bit of government paperwork, but it is possible to do. Everyone gets a little lost in the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah, anybody can do it. There's a lot of, like I said before, there's a lot of good useful information out there for people to figure out how to brew first and foremost, but also how to even open up a brewery. And surprisingly, I know we usually don't say this often, but surprisingly, the people that work at the government for AGCO or for the CRA are actually really helpful. I think it's just because like they just want our money.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say that about any other government organization, but they're actually really helpful. So if I'm like trying to fill out the paperwork for the first time, I'd call them up and ask them a question, and they would actually answer the question.
Yeah.
And I was just like so like refreshed, being like, wow.
Yeah,
I can't believe this is happening right now.
Given you the help that you need to get that, it's like, wait, you're going to help me sell alcohol?
Yeah, weird.
That's.
Well, I'm going to make you money too. So
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, that being said, do you have future plans of a tap room? Something? I mean, like, you don't have to spill the beans here if you don't want to.
Yeah, might not spill totally, but yeah, working on a couple different things that for sure next summer there will be a place to drink.
Nice.
Top Dog. So I'm looking forward to that and excited for that for sure, because I kind of went the different route where people come up to me and they're like, oh, like you don't have a tap room. That's weird. And my response to them is like, okay, like, do you drink Bud Light? And if it's not craft beer drinkers, they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you go to Bud Light's tap room and drink Bud Light? And they stop and think, and they're like, no, I don't. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, there's different ways to skin a cat. I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore, but there is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is a different, a different market than a lot. But again, for the local area, you yourself are kind of unique in this. Is like you are a one-man show, but you are that guy. You are the guy who has gotten in all the local establishments. You know, if anyone wants, say, sandwiches, beer, they got to. Well, okay, sandwich is a bad example because they're in licensees as well. But a lot of these places, to get all of their beers, you've got to go to their establishment, drink their beer, eat their food, right? Whereas you can kind of branch out, and being the one that makes the decisions, you brew the beer, you decide if you can afford to take on another licensee. You're not just a brewer who's like, hey, we need another 200 liters of this for next week. It's, if I want to make 200 more liters, I guess I'll go out and get another licensee.
I'm not pressuring my brewers to be like, hey, you need to make this like right away.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's got to make it. But I think the one thing that's helped me out a lot too to try to get in different licensees is in Sam Kuch's book, the owner of Boston Beer Company.
Yeah.
When they first started, well, they were contract brewing. When they first started, though, he went into like his local pub and he brought a case of beer and he's like, hey, I want you to sell this beer. And the guy's like, tried it, liked it. And he goes, all right, well, I'll give you a shot. Like August Bush or Anheuser-Busch is not walking the store trying to sell the beer. So that was something I took to heart, was like, all right, I'm going into these different licensees and I'm the only person there. It's not a sales rep. It's me. I'm the owner. I'm the brewer. So if they have any questions, I can answer absolutely everything for them. And it's also just building that relationship, which especially around here, we're lucky where craft beer is, let's say, widely accepted and it's starting to get even more popular. Like we can just count how many breweries. We're at what, 14, 15 breweries, probably, even more. Yeah. And there's more coming in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So people are very accepting of it. And those people are also the people that really want to support local as well. There's been a lot of different establishments where, they carry all the domestic and they're like, we don't really do craft because, like the big guys give us kickbacks. It's like, if we go through 75 or 100 liters of beer, we'll give you like an extra $75. So it's like, these guys are getting kegs for like half a price that a normal person would be going into the beer store and buying it.
Right.
Where you have other places where it's like, no, like we want to support local. And those places, especially ones that like I try to go into more often, and then I also go in there and spend my own money as well.
That's right.
Yeah, go in there, and anytime I go into different bars and restaurants, they're like my licensees. Like I always drink other people's beer. Yeah, people are always weird. They're like, "Why don't you drink your own?" I'm like, "I drink it all the time."
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't want to drink myself all the time. I already do that right now.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting myself on some higher cloud that I don't drink, because you're goddamn right. I've gotten into a place that's got my beer on tap and ordered my own beer.
for sure. Like the first couple of places where it got on, I was like, it was pretty cool to like sit there and like look at the mug and being like, damn, I'm actually at a bar right now.
This is mine.
I'm drinking my beer, which is pretty cool.
It is a really cool feeling. So there you go, the homebrew guys. It is a great feeling if you can get there. It's a little bit of work. Don't think that's going to turn around and happen in one day. It's but start now, get brewing, and find what you're good at and stick with it. So that's really cool. Speaking of your own tap room, though, I assume it's going to be dog friendly.
For sure. It can't not be.
It can't not be. Yeah. Being that your brewery is called Top Dog. Dogs is the theme. Now, on every episode of Brew Talk, I do try to get everyone to tell me a little bit about their lovely four-legged friends that they have. Yours have something to do with your company name, right? Yeah. So you have some dogs. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so the dog on the label is Tulo. And he is my Husky Lab. And then my other one I have there is Maverick. And he is a Border Collie Lab. And Maverick is obviously from Top Gun, where Top Dog came from Top Gun, because Top Gun is my favorite movie. And that's why I kind of designed like the Talk to Me Goose Pale Ale.
Yeah.
Life would be boring without dogs.
Yeah.
And like they're out there by the brewery all the time, and very fortunate. Like I said before, my grandparents were willing for me to take over their property basically and build a brewery. And my dogs just hang out there all day long with me. They run around the whole property. They love my grandma. Besides me, my grandma's their favorite person. I've never seen Maverick goes absolutely nuts for her when she comes out. It's hilarious. It's kind of unique, I think, in the brewing industry, just how many of us we have dogs. I don't know. Is it just we're all the majority of us, in our 30s. So, we missed the boat on kids because, we can't afford them anymore, but we still want to have something that loves us unconditionally, and dogs. Now, not everyone's got dogs, and I'm not saying that like you have to have a dog to be a brewer, but I think it's a requirement. I think a dog and a beard. Yeah. I think those are the two things.
Yeah. Oh no!
I would say Bodwin's got me beat still.
That's it.
Maybe I'll catch up to him one day.
Maybe I'll convince him to shave before his episode. All right, Mike, you can be on this episode, but you got to take the beard off.
Shave. Yeah. That'd be funny. Right. Yeah, I don't think he'll do that.
We'll start a pool. I'll tell you what. All the brewers listening to this here.
Yeah, maybe pitch in some money.
That's right. We'll donate it.
We'll donate it. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Mike shaves his beard. Oh, I like this. All right, I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah, we'll have to donate to a good cause.
So why did you get into brewing beer rather than all the other choices that you had? Was it just because you found it and you liked it, or what captivated you? You said you need that passion to want to do something like this. What gives you that passion to continue to do it? Because honestly, it sounds like a lot of work. Being the only guy, you don't have any other employees. You're constantly chasing new licensees or trying to make sure that you got enough beer in the fermenters, or I'm sure there's panic moments when you're brewing, but what holds that passion?
For sure be creativity, to having an outlet. I was always jealous of the kids in high school and grade school that were really good at drawing pictures, and I was drawing like stick figures all the time. And so I was never very, I wanted to say creative, but I just didn't have like that artistic aspect to it. So brewing beer is essentially my way to kind of, you could say, express yourself, but also show your creativity through it. So that was for sure one thing. And the other thing was just be able to start something from scratch.
Right.
Yeah, that was probably for sure the biggest thing. Is this, I always knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and I wanted to create something for myself. And so then literally stumbled upon beer, and then just you fall in love. It hooks you.
It really does.
It does. Like it's crazy how much it hooks you.
It really does. And it gets to the point too where you almost become a beer snob. Like you said, the guys who go in and they drink, do you drink Bud Light? Yeah. Like you ask any of us, any of the ones that have been on this episode, like, do you drink Bud Light? Only if someone hands it to me and I'm at their house. Like, I'm not going to say no to a cold wet beer, but at the same time, like,
doesn't mean we don't like the domestics too.
That's
like,
right.
I know you're talking with Jay about it, and I know you brought up OV. Like, OV was the beer I crushed in university all the time, and then even playing baseball too. That was all the guys drank. And like,
on tap right over here.
OV on tap is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's great. But
and that's a local thing, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's us, but that's okay. That's our nostalgia.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that sometimes you just need to have that lawnmower beer.
Yep.
Especially on a day where it's like, all right, I got a lot to do today. I know if I have craft beer or have something higher percent alcohol, I might not get all my chores done. So it's like, I'll have a light beer just to quench that thirst there for a second. Just like having a water.
I'm going to crush a couple of these Deepas before I go cut the grass.
I know. I'm kind of, you're a little bit behind right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're the one doing all the talking. So I guess we're, I'll tell you what. So since we're not going to get through all of these beers, tell us a little bit more about your selection, things that are available. I know you mentioned the names, but tell us a little bit about them. What makes them unique? What makes them special to you?
So as I mentioned before, Blue Bronco, inspired by M&S beer. It's essentially a 7.5% strong IPA, Citra, Mosaic, Amarillo, classic, great hops. From there, got my watermelon summer wheat, which is probably my most popular beer in the summertime.
Yeah,
just a simple, classic American wheat style beer with a little bit of the watermelon flavor on the back of it. Another ones I brought here was the wet hop beer. So I try to get most of my ingredients local as possible.
Yeah.
And so I actually purchased my Nugget, Hallertau, and Cascade hops from Redman Hops out in Ruthven or Kingsville. They're actually like just 5 minutes down the street from me.
Yeah.
So they called me up. Andy called me up one day. He was like, hey, you can do a wet hop beer? And I didn't really have time in my brewing calendar to do it. And I was like, all right, fine. All right, I'll do it. So I went there, I picked up a bunch of Cascade and picked up some Super Alpha. I was like, all right, I want to do something different. I was thinking maybe doing like an IPA, and I was like, nah, I'm going to do a harvest lager essentially. So I took one of my lager grain bills. I used Crispy from Scartman Labs, so it gives like the pseudo lager flavor to it. And then I did a ginormous hop stand of Super Alpha and Cascade. And if everyone's done a wet hop beer, they don't sink. They just sit at the top. I'm like sitting there pushing it down in the kettle, being like, hey, come on, like you got to get down in here, because it just wasn't going down. But it turned out to be a really good beer. I like it. And then I got my peach milkshake IPA, which has a little bit of obviously sweetness from the lactose at the beginning. And then the back end of it, you get a little bit of the hop flavor. I use Amarillo and Galaxy in that one. And then also with the peaches. And that was just something that doing fruit beers, experimenting again, are fun. And actually, when I was younger, my great uncle, that's right next door to my grandparents' place, had a peach farm. And my whole childhood, he was always farming peaches. So I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do like a peach beer. So do that peach beer. And when the day comes, I'll change the whole label of it, and I'll kind of name that beer after him. But the peaches balance perfectly with that one. And then the other one I got here is my Talk to Me Goose Pale Ale. So just a classic American Pale Ale, which the first beer I ever brewed, like we talked about, from getting that kit from Jake's.
Yeah.
And that one's got Centennial and then locally grown Cascade in it.
Nice.
And it's probably the one beer that I mess around with the most. I still mess around to it to this day.
Yeah.
Like I make subtle changes and a buddy comes by, I'm like, here, try it.
Yeah.
And they're like, tastes the same. I'm like, I know exactly. I'm like, I taste the difference though. And it's all just messing around with different hops. There's so many different things out there that you start reading where it's like, oh, maybe if I try this and I do this hop stand at this temperature for this period of time, maybe it'll impart a different flavor into it instead. So you just read so many things and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to try it and see.
It gets down to the point of it. It's mad science, really,
is.
you know, and, but like you said, you give it to the normal palate. You give it to someone who drinks your beer and they're like, yeah, this beer is good. It tastes this. No, it tastes the same to me. No, it does not.
No, Or it's like you mess up the water, maybe add some more sulfate into to kind of dry it out, or calcium chloride to give it more body, whatever it is. And you're always messing around with stuff all the time. Yeah, so these are kind of some of my staples. And then this winter, I'll have my coffee stout, which I named after my grandpa. It's called Nobody Like Joe Coffee Stout, because for some reason he always asks me about the coffee beer. Like I made it once or twice, and he drinks the odd beer I give to him.
Right.
But it was just for some reason he's like, oh yeah, you can do the coffee beer again? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do the coffee beer again. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna name that one.
He really liked that one.
Yeah, he did. So I named that one after him. I'll bring back my Scotch ale, and then I'm also going to do cookies and cream milk stout this year, which is one that, as we were talking before about experimenting, doing different things. It was one that I was going to do last year, but didn't have the time. So it's one that I haven't really done. So I'm like, hey, let's just try to mess around with something and see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. And you know what, like to be able to do such small batches, you're able to really kind of like bend the rules a little bit on what's available for you. Yeah. You know, you can brew your regular landmark beers, but you know, once now you've established a name for yourself in some of these licensees, if you come up with them and say, hey, like I've got a secondary beer, a lot of them probably jump on it and say, yeah, sure.
Especially if it's one where it's like, hey, this beer is gonna be exclusive to you.
Yeah.
Which is also where I know I'm fortunate enough that I can make those calls and make that judgment all the time.
Right.
Because there's nobody at my brewery that's going to tell me, no, you can't brew that.
Well, Maverick might.
Yeah. One of the dogs might say something to it. No. Yeah.
You listen to them. When they say no, you listen to them.
Brew days are a lot of brewing and a lot of playing fetch. That's for sure. All day long, especially Maverick. I'll be like mashing in. I turn around. He's sitting there with the ball. I'm like, really, man? Like, hey, give me a little more time here.
Yeah.
Once I got some stuff going, then I'll play ball.
That's it. Yeah. Ball is life, though.
Oh, for him, yeah. With the border collie in him, that's all he cares about.
My Aussie Vera is the same way. Like, I can't not be doing anything. If I stand up and move, she picks up a ball. She's like, oh, it's time. And I'm like, it's not time. Yeah. And you throw it once, and now it's time. So
or even just getting ready in the morning. And if I start putting on like my jeans or something, it's like, no, I got to go do a meeting or something. They already know, like, okay, we're not going out. But if I put on like shorts or like normal brewing stuff, like, hey, we're going somewhere for sure.
Yeah, all right, we're coming. Yeah. We're coming along. It's going to be great. You know, so because you've done so many festivals outside of the Windsor Essex area, we don't really get too much locally. I know with the pandemic, it's kind of been a little difficult. But you know, I think there's a beer festival coming up in the next couple of weeks here. Where do you see the festival? Where do you see the Windsor Essex scene going? Do you think that brew festivals are going to be more? Do you think it's going to be more beer tours, like you were saying? Is there something about it that you would change?
I hope there's more festivals, and I think it's even something that all the breweries around here need to kind of get together and figure something out. Because we look over in the States, the Michigan Brewers Guild puts on 4 festivals a year. Mm-hmm. They do their fall one at Eastern Market, which is phenomenal. They do their summer one up in Yippee, which I went to, and it was an amazing festival. And they do another winter one up in Grand Rapids. So I think locally, we all need to kind of band together and be like, okay, let's start making this area with as many we have here. We have like 14, 15 breweries in this area. Like London, with the population, what, 500,000 people have 4 or 5?
Yeah.
And we have triple that. Yeah. So we really need to, I think, band together and be like, okay, let's start doing some more festivals down here.
Yeah.
Let's try to get more people to come down here. And not just for beer. Like we got amazing wineries. We got Wolf Head for distilleries. Mm-hmm. So we need, I think, as a whole, just start promoting this area more.
Absolutely.
And especially for me, for being out in the county in Kingsville. Like we got 4 breweries in Kingsville. We have all those wineries out there. So it's almost like a no-brainer just to bring people down to this area. Because I felt personally a lot this summer, and even talking to a lot of different licensees, that since it was the first summer, a lot of people were actually able to go away and do something. A lot of people went away.
Yeah.
And it felt like at times, there was people from out of town coming in, but it wasn't the same rate.
There was no attraction in the area, right? Like people aren't going to come down here to jump into our blue collar workforce that is Windsor, right? Like come down to Windsor for the casino. Yeah. You know, like there needs to be something. So yeah, you're right with the amount of people that we have, and even like to bring London, like we're not that far from London. I would drive 2 hours for the Michigan Craft Beer Festival at Eastern Market. Because that is just
it's awesome.
That is I still have tokens. I got so many tokens laying.
I probably got some
bags
too.
of them.
but people from up in there, like it's always funny because essentially the craft brewing industry especially our suppliers like stops at London. Yeah, and it's like I need to get some pallets of stuff here. Oh, it's going to be like triple the cost because you live south of London. But people up in London, especially in Waterloo, like they knew our area pretty well. And they're like, oh yeah, and they'll be like, oh, where are you from? And I always just said Windsor because Windsor was easy. And they'll be like, oh, actually, I'm from like Kingsville. I'm like, oh, yeah, we've been to Kingsville before. We've been to the Grove, we've been to Banna Goose, or it's Windsor. Like, oh yeah, like what's that place downtown that makes like 30 different beers all the time? I'm like, oh yeah, Craftsman's. Yeah, they're great guys. But like people know this area well, which is pretty cool that up even there and pass that into Toronto. And we just need to really, I think, capitalize on that for sure.
Yeah. The beer market is huge. There's no reason for it to happen yet. And like you said, this year, this just past the pandemic is kind of a little bit of a shift on everything. Everyone was like, oh, I can fucking do something now. And then they all take off. Exactly. So, maybe the beer festivals this year aren't, but there's no reason that next year all the breweries in the area can't get together. There's so much land out there. It's not like we can't have a festival.
And not just one, multiple festivals. And rotate them throughout. Yeah. Where it's like, all right, hey, you know what? This year we're going to do a summer beer festival in Windsor. Then maybe next year it'll be in Kingsville. Hey, let's do a fall beer festival here. Especially with the wealth of vegetables and fruit and everything we have down here. Like we go through the seasons pretty well. We're fortunate where it's like, all right, we have like our pumpkin season. So it's like, all right, why don't we do a fall beer festival that revolves on something like that? Or actually just came to me right now, we should almost do like a Top Chef style thing. Ooh, that would be cool. Doing an actual like beer competition there where we all have to pick one ingredient.
I would definitely love to host something like that.
Yeah, it's a future episode of Brew Talk there.
All right, so all you brewers watching this right now, start planning out your beers now because
we should set something up.
We're going to Iron Chef it to the death. Or do you think that might be a little too much?
Be a little too extreme.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But pick some wild and crazy ingredients, but local wild ingredients.
Maybe you can grab some tomatoes from Leamington.
Oh, you can grow some tomatoes.
Do yourself a Michelada beer.
Well, I've had people ask me if we can do a tomato beer, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do tomato beer. But my grandpa's actually made tomato wine back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm like, I don't know if that tastes good. But hey, anything that's got sugar in it, you can ferment it.
That's it, yeah. If you ferment it, they will drink it.
They will.
So being that you are your only guy, like as a brewer who brews for other people, sometimes, you come across challenges, whether it's equipment or things that are out of your league. What are some major challenges that you have faced as the sole proprietor of what you do?
Not having enough beer. For sure this year, for the summer, where I had different licensees or I approached different people to carry stuff. They approached me and I'm just like, hey, you're going to have to just wait a little bit till I get everything under control. Because like I said, I did 13, 14 different events this year. So almost every weekend in the summer I was out doing something. So I was trying to really focus on those to try to get more people to obviously try all my stuff.
Right.
So then where does everyone else go to? Well, they go to licensees after.
Yeah.
Which is a cool relationship that's super unique with me, is that the more people that drink my beer, we're actually going to go to those places, and then it makes them money and it also makes me money because we're going out there and trying different things.
Right.
But I think it was very unfortunate too this past year when Connor from O'Neill Malting shut down. That was super unfortunate because I try to buy as many things as local. And yes, I know we don't really grow grain and malt down here, but have him out in Chatham where it was like I could just text him and be like, hey, like what do you have? And he tells me what you have. And it was a nice sale. Take my truck out there, drive out, put a pallet in the back of the truck, and then now it's like, all right, now I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Now I got to call up BSG or some of our other lovely Toronto companies that we all love dealing with and be like, hey, I need something delivered. And it's like, oh, that's going to be like $300 or $4 to deliver a pallet. And it's like, oh, that's this unfortunate. Really, it's like, oh, can I combine an order with somebody else I know? No, you can't do that. I'm like, but they're in the same town. No, it's going to be the same individual shipping price, which has happened to me before. It's just the challenges.
It's frustrating, right? It's almost like a bottleneck in your service too, because then that cuts into what you imagine if you're saving that extra money, the experimental beers that you can do. I want to do a 5-hop IPA,
for sure.
right? But if you're spending an extra $200 on all your grain to get it down here, like you're going to start cutting into your overhead, and you can't do that. And then you got to start.
Yeah.
It turns into the fact that when you're opening your tap, you're just trying to make money rather than opening your tap because you're passionate about it. It's like, here, taste this delicious beer.
And all those kind of boring beers, as we like to say, are also the ones that bring money into the business to let me do all the fun stuff too.
Right.
So especially like the staples, like in the summertime, watermelon summer wheat, which for me, it's a super easy beer to brew. It's not really a fun brew day. It's a super day. You just kind of go through the motions, get it done.
Yeah.
But then that lends to me brewing all the other fun stuff because I know it's like the big seller in the summertime. So you kind of have to do those boring beers at times to let you do all the fun stuff after.
Yeah. And you know what? Like you can break down the boring beers as much as you want, but I don't know. When I've got a beer on tap at home, when I've got a crushable, a boring beer on tap, that's probably the first tap I grab, because as much as I love to drink, you know, a 7.5% or whatever it was, 7.5% IPA, you know, I'm gonna have one, maybe two. But if I'm at home and I'm crushing a couple of beers online with the guys, like I want to have 3 or 4 of something that's uneventful. Yeah. You know, I just want to drink a delicious beer. Yeah. So, you know, everyone rags on the boring beers, but you know, they have purpose. There's a reason why they are the biggest sellers, because who doesn't want to go out and just crack a beer and socialize? Which
I think that's why, like, there's one beer that I brewed too that I didn't bring today is my session New England IPA, so my jam session, which I think session beers are going to only get bigger and bigger as the years go on. We have all those fads, you could say, like IPAs are never going to go anywhere. Sours might fade out eventually, but I think the session is going to be the one next category that's going to take off even more, because people want to have those 6, 7, 8% beers, but only be at 4%.
Right.
So they can drink one at lunchtime and go back to work and still be okay and not be little two-pods, you could say. Or
the old liquid lunch.
Yeah, or to go out and do stuff on the weekend or doing chores around the house where it's like, hey, I just want to have one it's full of flavor, but it's nice and light and easy to drink.
And it's risky too, right? You go out for lunch or, you know, an early dinner with friends and it's like, oh, I'll get a beer and it's 8.5%. Oh, yeah. It's like, but I got to drive home. Yeah. So I guess I'll pass on the 8.5%.
Especially when I was starting to brew Blue Bronco. I was brewing at my grandparents' at the time there, and then I'd bring a growler home to my parents' place and I would drink a whole growler on the couch and just like, oh, I'm enjoying it, like trying to taste it, see if there's anything I can do different, and then get up and being like, whoa, what just happened?
Sleeping here tonight.
Yeah, that's actually happened to a couple different buddies. I had another one good buddy of mine too. When I was still in brewing for like 2 or 3 years, I made some like stronger stuff like that. Yeah. I'm like, here's a growler, and his dad came down from out of town and he was drinking it, and his dad gets up and he goes, "What did you give me? Like, I am hammered right now." Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Should we crack another one?
Absolutely. I made the mistake recently. Not the mistake, but I made a 7%. It was a wheat beer that I was just messing around, experimenting with. And it turned out great. It was fantastic. Flavor-wise, it was one of those ones, like you said, it was a high alcohol percentage beer that went down like a session. And it's great until you got to stand up to go to the bathroom, and then you're just falling over face down. And, well, shouldn't have done that.
Yep.
But, you know, it's a fad. And it was a fad. Those larger... Yeah, there probably still are a fad. I guess there are people out there that love the high alcohol stuff, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I don't want to wake up with a hangover anymore.
I think it's the same thing with juicies. I'm kind of over the whole juicy, hazy. I know people love them.
Yeah,
they for sure. I think they have their purpose, like especially with the BGCP guidelines now, they're actually putting a spot there for hazies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want something clean.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy how much your palate changes too over the years. And before I was big into those because it's like, all right, I want to be punched in the face with hops. And then now it's like, nah, I want something like clean. I want a nice like West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
That has those classic American hops where you got the citrus, you got like the earthy tones and the pine too, and not just an absolute citrus hop bomb in your mouth all the time.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I do love a hazy. But yeah, the next day after drinking something like that, it's like every time you're burping, you're trying to pick off. I'm at work and is that Vic's Secret? Oh, is that Mosaic? Yeah. What am I burping with my breakfast here? So tell us, what do we got here?
I thought I poured peach milkshake, but I didn't. This is the wet hop harvest style.
Oh, I love a wet hop. I think when I was home brewing, one of the first times I grew my own hops. And you're right about them floating on the top. Like here I am in a Brewzilla trying to just jam them all down in my laundry room. And
so it's overflowing.
It's just beer everywhere. I think I went into the fermenter with like 16 liters just because of all the absorb, like just things that you don't know what to experiment with.
And it's also something too that you don't really plan ahead for it. You kind of, as you're doing it, you're like, oh crap, I didn't think about this. I didn't think about that. All these amount of hops are going to sit here, and they're just going to, and they're so full of water, they're just going to sit there and float for the first little bit until you can try to get it all down there.
Just cramming them down there. I think I took like the screen from the Brewzilla and just like pushed like the one that's in the mash tun. I just jammed it down inside. I'm like, oh, you stay in here. But to this day, and this is one of those things that I was awful when I was first started home brewing. I say first started, I'm still awful for it now. I don't write shit down, or I write very little down. A lot of times for me, it's like, what did you brew this week? I don't know, whatever I had laying around. I used to take home screw up kits at work. Like if someone would order something and we put the wrong grain in it, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take it and I'll brew it and have a good time. And I think it was one of those. It was like, what's in this beer? I'm like, no, I don't know.
Well, that probably also comes from like you probably liking, like loving to cook.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that comes from that. Like I also love to cook. My dad loves to cook, and he would just go in the pantry and find random stuff. I think that's one thing that got inspired with beer. It's like, I'm just going to grab random ingredients and put them all together and just see what happens. Because you really aren't going to know until you try. You can read so many different things. Like, all right, this hop's going to give you this flavor profile, or these grains are going to give you this sort of maltness, but you're really not going to know until you experiment with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And but that wet hop beer, I think, was probably one of the best beers I ever made. I don't even know that it was in a keg a week. Like it was just, I'm just killing it. And it was fantastic. But that being said, this is...
Yeah, it was a fun one. Like I said,
delicious.
Something just a little bit different. And on the back, I used more Cascade than Super Alpha, but I actually get a lot of the Super Alpha kind of like earthy tones to it in the back end of your palate.
So how long, like, did you dry them at all, or you grabbed them that day?
I grabbed them. I did it the very next day.
Okay.
So it sat in my walk-in cooler for less than 24 hours. Beautiful. And then just, boom, dropped them all in there.
Now, is this available anywhere?
Right now, it's going to be, at this very moment, it's not, but it'll be available at Leah Maria's in cans soon.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I might try to convince like a licensee to maybe throw it on tap somewhere too.
Well, any licensees that are watching this is delicious.
Yes, you should get it.
So you should get it. I have guys that come into the shop all the time and they're like, oh, I'm growing some hops in my backyard and I heard I should dry them. And I'm like, wet hop it.
Yeah,
just throw it in. You like, oh, it's going to be grassy. No, it's not. No. I mean, like, yeah, it's got a little bit of greenness to it, but like, it's not an overpowering greenness. No. This is fantastic.
And you could think too, you're going to use pounds and pounds of it. And you're like, wow, okay, like this might be super bitter. And it's not. It's essentially, you think 5 to 1 is huge, what it is. Yeah. So you're using like 5 pounds and essentially it's like, all right, this is only 16, 17 ounces, being like, hey, this is absolutely nothing for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember jamming that screen down because I've only done that one wet hop. Every year I've kind of just forgotten about my hops. Other things have come up and I want to do it again, but it's that memory, I think, is my favorite part of that wet hop beer. It wasn't just the fact that it was probably the best beer I ever made, but it was the memory of brewing it too. Like you said, this is our creativity. We paint a picture with this, and painting a picture is me jamming my knuckles down on boiling wort as I'm trying to keep the hops from overflowing. The dogs are licking up all the sweet. Well, get out of here! You can't drink that.
My dogs love the spent grain. They go nuts for the spent grain. I got a buddy who comes by and picks up all the spent grain after he takes it, feeds his chickens. Yeah. But as soon as I'm starting to get rid of all the grain, like my dogs are right beside me the whole time. And it's like, all right, come on. So I scoop some out. I give them some in the back. They eat it. The only thing is, for some reason, it makes them poop like crazy. Oh. Like crazy. There was one day where I made the mistake and I brewed all one day. And the next day I had to go away to a golf tournament. So essentially gone all day. And so my dogs were alone for 4 or 5 hours. And then my mom goes by the house and checks on them. And then she calls me. She goes, your dog's like pooped in the washroom. I'm like, what do you mean they pooped in the washroom? That was weird. And I go in there and I'm like,
they're good boys.
Oh man, it was just chunks of spent grain all over my washroom floor. But I was kind of happy they actually went in the washroom and did it and not anywhere else in my house.
I guess, yeah. Could have been all over your comforter or something, right? That would have been
They were smart. They went right into the washroom.
You know what? There's another thing too for any local up and coming bakers. Hit up your local breweries. Spent grain dog treats are a big thing, and they are very easy to make. So if you're looking for spent grains, I can tell you we will give it to you for free.
Yeah. If anybody wants to make some too, hit me up.
Yeah.
Get some dog treats. There we go. It'll be fun.
What's do we have an email to contact you? I mean, I'll follow all the social medias with Instagram, Top
Facebook.
Dog. Yeah.
Yeah, just topdogbrewingcompany@gmail.com.
There you go.
Yeah, pretty simple.
Want to send an email? Give me your spent grains. I want to make dog biscuits. And I mean, it's a dog named brewery. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Throw some Top Dog biscuits in there.
I actually had my aunt do it one time too. They actually turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of peanut butter, pumpkin. Dogs don't care. You can mix flavors. Yeah.
Yeah, just them on themselves, they were fine. I think she mixed peanut butter with it too, but
Sure.
yeah, like I said, they go absolutely nuts for it.
Yeah.
It's funny.
That's awesome.
I want to ask you a question though.
Oh, geez. Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's from the tables. If there was one beer that you had to brew for the rest of your life, and it could just be a style essentially, what style would it be?
Stout.
Yeah, I'll
Without question.
Definitely agree with you.
Without question. I love me a stout.
The
Everyone's
smell,
like,
the
oh,
smell.
it's summertime. You can't drink stouts. And I'm like, bullshit, you can.
I'm not even a big stout drinker, but I love making them.
Yeah.
It's for sure my favorite beer to make in the brew house. It
Yeah.
just, people walk in and they're like, what's that smell? I'm like, it's stout season.
It's a stout.
Yeah. And just the color, the chocolatey, everything that comes out.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's for sure a beautiful beer.
I love big, thick, heavy imperial stouts. I'm actually I really want to get my hands on a barrel this year, and I want to just kind of jam as much beer as I'm just gonna get a plunger and just shove it all in there, like just fill this barrel up with as much stout as I can, and let it sit, because this is the problem. Is like I love stouts, but I love like more of a classic. Okay, so you're talking about beers that we grew up. I was a Guinness fan.
Yep.
I would think I was
Nothing wrong with
17,
Guinness.
and I remember going somewhere and someone ordered me a snake bite, and I wasn't even old enough to drink in a bar yet. And someone was like, "Here, drink this." The only thing I've had up until then was like stealing Bud Lights or blue lights
Yep.
from my dad, and it was just this totally different flavor profile of the cider and the stout together. Like I had no idea what I was drinking. I didn't know if I liked it. It was confusing. And then like I remember once I was able to go out, and I think I had my first snake bite at the Kildare House. Like that's the place you go. And it was like someone was like, "You're getting a snake bite." I'm like, "Yes, I've had one of those before. I want one of those." And then it turned into black and tans after that. And then I remember like ordering like, "Hey, can I get a black and tan but with like more stout, more Guinness?" And then I went through a Guinness kick when I was all my friends were drinking like Lucky, or I think Molson Canadian was pretty popular when I was, but I just remember like getting Guinness. Everyone made fun of you, like, "What are you drinking that? What are you drinking that for?" But
It's so smooth.
it's delicious. Now I have one, and it's like, yeah, it's a Guinness. It's fine. It's that nostalgia factor. If I'm out somewhere, I see one, like, yeah, I'll get a Guinness. But stouts to me are just my nostalgia, my favorite thing. It's summertime. I can drink one after cutting the grass.
Summer stouts too. Summer stouts, that should be another big thing that should be coming out. Summer stouts are awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really good. I think best stout I ever had, 2019, I went to the Great American Beer Festival, and I was supposed to go with some buddies, and they all bailed. I'm like, I'm going by myself. So I went, had a blast. Actually ran into a buddy from up here down there, which is super random. But during the festival, a lot of different breweries are all doing kind of like release dates for different beers. So found one brewery that was doing something. I was like, all right, I'm going to go there. And they came out with like this giant champagne bottle. And it was a barrel-aged stout with freeze-dried ice cream, lactose, and banana.
Oh my God.
And it was like liquid ice cream. Like getting ice cream, letting it melt, and then drinking it. I couldn't believe how delicious this beer was.
Thick. I'm just spoon.
Oh yeah, you could. And since then, I'm like, I really got to figure out how to do this one day.
Yeah,
it was phenomenal. Best stout I've ever had by far.
It was about 7 or 8 years ago for myself, and I was at the Easter Market Michigan Craft Beer Festival. New Holland Brewery's Dragon Milk Stout.
Yep.
That is my, like, when I had that stout. I think I was just getting into the brewing scene myself. Like, done a couple of like the Jake's Brew kits. I wasn't even making my own recipes yet. It was like going in and going, asking Steve to put together an extract recipe, and then asking him how I could make it into this crazy awesome beer. And he's just like, just throw whatever into it, man. You'll be fine. It'll be good. And then I remember drinking that Dragon's Milk, and that was it. Like, that was the turning point for me. And my brother-in-law, he started brewing coincidentally at the same time. Like, we got together one weekend, and it was like, "Hey man, I just started brewing beer." And he's like, "Holy shit, me too." Like, we pulled all our equipment out and we had all this beer ready to go. And I think it was like maybe our third or fourth recipe that we did. It was like a Dragon's Milk clone, and we kind of did different things. And it was like that moment where I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I remember when we drank that beer afterwards, it was like the special event beer. We bottled it. You know, we were already into kegging because I think I bottled once, realized it sucked.
I bottled for like a year.
Oh, it was awful.
I recruited my younger sister. She was like 8 at the time, helping me like fill bottles. I'm like, you're gonna come home and do this.
No, I can't. I did it and it was awful. There's beer all over the floor.
Not fun.
You know, give me a keg. I think I bought a keg before I even bought a kegerator. Like I just put the beer in it. I think I conditioned in the keg, let it sit. I think it sat for about 3 months, and then I finally got a kegerator and was able to hook it all up. But yeah, I remember we bottled that stout and we drank it for like a year because it was like 9-10% too, right? It wasn't a light beer, but it was like every time we were together, it'd be a jam night, like, oh, Dragon's Milk, and we'd all crack one, and you know everyone would drink it.
And that's probably one too that they only released at certain times of the year,
yeah.
right? And I think one of the coolest things with it is trying to get to that point where if I had a beer that people were like, oh man, you got to have that beer, and you only release it at a certain time of year. Because reading the Goose Island book before they got bought by Budweiser, they were talking about like they would do all these releases, and they would do like ones for different seasons. And I think it was one of the, like their winter beers they did. It was like the first time they did it, and it was like down the street of people that were trying to get in to buy this beer.
Right.
I'm like, that's a pretty cool feeling. If you can have a beer that people are lining out of your brewery to get, I think at that point you've made it.
And you know, like going back and watching humans go nuts over things like Beanie Babies, and you know, you tell someone it's a limited edition, limited release, and they'll jump all over it.
People, especially get it. You can put the nice wax and everything on top of it, and all nice and fancy.
I think I've said it before. I have paid $20 for a bottle of beer because it had wax on top of it.
It looks cool.
Looking at you, Donovan. So and you know what? It was a good beer. It was a great beer. I think Eric Minch, who was my last episode, he just cracked his barrels. I think he was talking about them on the episode. He hadn't cracked them yet. He just cracked them.
Nice.
And so anyone who's looking to get themselves some nice, delicious barrel-aged beer, I haven't tried it yet, so I can't vouch for it. But
barrels are like a whole other avenue in craft beer too. When I was in Denver, I ran into a guy there that worked at a brewery in San Diego, and he was their head blender. Okay. And that was just his title. And I'm like, okay, so what do you do? He goes,
I'm the Vitamix.
Yeah, he's like, so we're talking more about sour beers. So he's like, all right, we had a whole warehouse that was all sour beers, and all the barrels are stacked like 10 high. And obviously, like, with the different temperature fluctuations from the bottom to the top, you all get different flavor profiles. So he's like, yeah, I'll take like one barrel here in the middle and the top one, and I'll mix it and just blend it together until I get like the flavor profile I want. Which I was just like, wow, it's crazy to think that you have breweries that just have one guy that specifically does blending. Yeah. And you can just get so many crazy different flavor profiles from it too. Yeah. Just by having it stacked different ways. And it can only be a temperature increase of maybe 1 degree. Yeah. But you're going to have a totally different beer.
Yeah. That's it. Blending, it's in itself is just this whole other
realm.
Oh, I'm fairly lucky. I have a decent taste palate. Like I can kind of distinguish a little bit of flavors. In fact, last night I spent the majority of the evening mixing different ciders that I had made with some juices, trying to find a decent blend to send away.
Love making cider. Oh, cider's fun.
we just did all peaches this year, so it's just from the same place. Actually, I think that you got the peach puree from.
Yep, they got some Kranix orchards, right? I think I said it right.
Yeah.
Got the peaches from there. So super. Hopefully that keeps taking off too, because that saved me a lot of time.
Yeah,
a lot of time. Before
absolutely.
I'd actually had I'd volunteer my grandma to be my fruit cutter. So she would actually be like, here's the peaches. And she'd have to cut them all up and throw them. I'd help her as well too. But yeah,
Come on, work those fingers,
so I was like, hey, don't worry. You don't have to do it this year. I'm going to get some peach puree instead. Make it a heck of a lot easier.
That's right. So shout out to Joey, Savannah, and Sue from Kranix Orchard putting all that together for us. So, but yeah, we were blending up some cider flavors last night. But yeah, it's like you said, barrels are just a totally different world that I think if you've got the ability to get yourself a barrel, fill it. Just brew 5 times.
Don't worry about what's going to happen to it.
That's
just
right.
Put something in there.
High alcohol, load it up. Even if you want to blend it down, blend some of it down. Because I mean, like 55 gallons is a lot of beer for a home brew. But hey, it keep it in the barrel. It's not going to go anywhere.
Especially with sour beers, and I haven't divulged into different sour beers yet because my system hasn't really allowed me to it. But I know one day when I can get to that point, I would love to do a whole sour program that's just all barrel-aged sours. Yeah. I know there's one place, again, that I ran into at the Brew Festival in Eastern Market, and all their sours there were stored for a minimum of a year.
Oh, okay.
So it was 6 months I had them in barrels, and after 6 months they threw fruit in there and let it sit for another 6 months. So it was crazy where they're giving me little taste testers. I'm like, this beer's been sitting here for a month,
Yeah.
or sorry, a year.
Yeah.
And it was delicious. Some of the best sours I've ever had.
Yeah.
Was from that.
Yeah, you can really start ripping apart the level, the complexities of it. But you're kind of left to just the wind. Like, who knows what this is going to turn out? That's the downside. Is like, yeah, all right, I got 55 gallons worth of beer. It's been sitting here for a year, and you crack it. But I feel like at a certain point, it's not going to taste bad.
No,
yeah,
it shouldn't. It shouldn't. At least.
It shouldn't. It's been sitting in a barrel. Is it infected? Yeah, it is. But drink it anyway.
The hardest part of that too is gonna be if it turns out awesome to try to replicate that, because you're not gonna be able to do that.
This is why you're selling it for $20 a bottle.
Yeah,
because you want to get your maximum yield.
It's one of those ones too where it's like, all right, I'm gonna put a bottle away too. I'm gonna put 10 bottles each year. I'm gonna crack it.
Yeah, and that's when Grandpa starts asking you, hey, can you make that beer again?
Yeah. No. That was a really hot summer. It changed the whole flavor profile of it. Yeah, not gonna happen again.
Do you have any barrels taking up real estate in the garage?
Not yet.
No way.
Soon. I actually have a spot already that I'm hopefully going to plant them and put them in there.
Nice.
Yeah. But that's going to be the fun part too, is like you can go into areas where it's all temperature controlled or just let it fluctuate like the seasons do.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to do a trial where one of my buildings is climate controlled. I'll leave one in there. Another one's not. So I want to see what the difference of it, which again, that's just comes down to experimenting, and that's what's fun.
That's right. And being the guy that makes the decisions in your brewery, like, you can do that.
Yeah.
And so many of us, like, we wish we could, but with that comes how much work.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as going, oh, I'm in charge, I can make the decisions. It's, well, I'm in charge and it's 7:00 on a Sunday and I'm still here scrubbing kegs.
Oh, those days happen. Those days happen where I'm like, I really don't feel like brewing today. But the funny thing is, like, the days that you don't feel like brewing, once you get there and you get going, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm good now. This is fun.
I remember when I kind of expanded myself in the home brewing league, and I brought myself from a 5-gallon brew system up to a 15. Well, it was kegels, it was a kegel system, but I squeezed them and got 15 out of it because I had a kegerator that allowed me to have 6 kegs on at a time. So I had to fill them, and that's a lot of brewing. So I was lucky, but it was every day going into that brew day. It was the dread of knowing how much work I've got in front of me, of lifting 180-pound kegels after it's all said and done, loaded with grain, all by myself. And I'm still out there at 7:00 at night, hosing things down, getting bit by mosquitoes. And it's just, you're angry and you're kind of drunk because of course you've been drinking all day.
Oh, I had a real bad experience. Funny with that. I had a real bad experience that we were talking about before. There was a brew like that too, where there's always that one brew, the odd time where like things just don't go right.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden a hose falls off somewhere and you got beer going all over the floor, or you maybe forgot to do a hop addition, or you got distracted by something else. But there was a brew, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks, I think, before my birthday. And I wasn't really going to brew that day. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to brew. So I didn't have the proper footwear on at the time. And all of a sudden I kind of looked away for a second, came back, and the kettle was boiling over a bit, and then it went ahead and splashed right on my foot, right through my running shoe.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, that pain was atrocious, the amount of pain it had. And right away, my foot just started swelling up. So I proceeded to then finish the whole brew day on one foot.
Yeah.
But for about 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was just wearing a thong, flip-flop everywhere with my foot just all bandaged up with the blisters.
Yeah.
I think it was only like a week later, I was still brewing again.
I feel like if you have not burnt your feet brewing beer, you haven't brewed. I did something similar. It was I was scooping beer, moving things around, and I just happened to like hit something when I had a bucket full of hot wort that I was moving, and it was because I don't want to even go into why I was moving a bucket full of hot wort, but I was, and it splashed and like right on my foot, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't think anything of it, got myself ready to go, went into the walk-in, and I'm peeling my sneaker off and my foot's steaming, and then like the second I peeled my sock off, I turned white. I was like, oh god.
And at the time you're like, oh, it's not that bad, and then it's slowly the blood blisters just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're like, okay, that's not good.
Actually, in fact, good. The very next day I went out and I bought rubber boots.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I got proper shoes after that. I definitely learned my lesson.
Yeah. I don't just wear these because I like them. I did brew today.
They're for protection.
There is purpose. But you're right. Like but even from a homebrew perspective, going back to my brother-in-law and I, like, we've brewed together many times. You find someone who's in the hobby with you and you spend your days doing it. We used to have a saying, it's like, it's not brewing unless your socks are wet. Like if you haven't spilled water, wort, any hot wort on the floor, then you haven't done it.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't experienced brewing it. Now, I'm not saying you should.
No.
Don't go out and do it on purpose, but you will. It'll
It'll creep up on you when you least expect it.
Yeah. Where the hell did this come from? All right. Well, do we got time for one more and a few more stories here?
Now let's go for peach milkshake.
Ooh, I think it's a little cooler.
Yes, it is. I got one cool story though. Back in the day, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I especially doing like different brewery tours and trying to experience different things, which I think that's probably one of the biggest things that any brewery can do is to have a really good brewery experience. I was in Pennsylvania for work, and Yuengling was about like an hour or so away from there. And when I was there for work, the local pub there had Yuengling for like $2 a glass. And Yuengling's probably one of my favorite American beers.
It is a classic.
Been around since 1829.
Yeah.
Their amber lager is phenomenal. Actually, I try to make my AAA amber lager as closest as I possibly could. And it's funny, on their website, they actually show the ingredients on there. It was like, yeah, we use two-row, obviously. And then they use Munich, and then we use Cascade and cluster hops. So I was like, I got the grain bill and the hops right here. I'm like, I can do this. So it took me a lot of brews, but I got it where it's close. Never be able to get it right on, but still pretty close. But I went there and did a brewery tour, and I got there like right in the nick of time before it started. And the coolest part of the whole tour and the best experience, something I'll never forget, was they took you 20 feet underground, because when they first started, obviously, you got to have everything at the proper cellar temperature. So they dug underground. That was their way to cool everything off. And we're walking around the whole cellars, and it's just giant caves, essentially. And they have some old wooden tanks and everything there. But they had one section where it was all just a brick wall. And they're like, yeah, like this is the brick wall that the government came in when Prohibition was going on. And they put these brick walls in there so you can have access to it. And I was just standing there being like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like this is history right in front of me here. It was probably the coolest brewery tour I'll ever do in my life. And and it's free. I highly recommend to anybody that ever goes to Pennsylvania. It's in Pottsville, this tiny little town. Best brewery tour I will ever do.
Yeah, I have not made it down there, but that definitely sounds, especially for something like Yuengling, right? You know, if the brewers, we've tried them all, you know. Like this is back in the day when we're all sitting around with our friends and everyone's ordering Canadian or Lucky, and we're the guy going, no, give me that weird.
Yeah, what's that weird name that's over there?
Yeah. Or as Eric mentioned last time, Upper Canada Dark. You know, and hey, I would be lying if I haven't had my Upper Canada Dark share or not. But
mine back in the day was in high school, Keystone Light.
Keystone.
They had great marketing, great commercials, and I was like, I'm going to try it. It's basically just Coors Light, but yeah, it was pretty good beer back in the day.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of Alexander Keith's.
I don't get why they call it an IPA.
It is
right? They call it an IPA, or they call it a pale ale, right?
It's an IPA. Yeah.
I've had people ask me that too. It's like, is your IPA close to Alexander Keith's? I'm like, no.
Yeah. No. Now listen, there are no laws to say that you can't name something which you want to name it.
No.
Well, the BJCP, but unless you're brewing to those laws, there are no laws.
Yeah. You can't tell me that Alexander Keith's is a IPA.
Thank God, I've drank Coors Light that's been hoppier than that before.
Yeah. It's great now out of Windsor because you can actually get those flights up to Halifax where it's like on flare now. So I want to eventually do that and go to a brewery tour there and be like, talk to a brewer. This is not IPA, right? And they'll be like, no, it's not. I'm like, okay, thanks. Yeah. I'm going to go home now. That's all I need to know.
I needed a confirmation.
Yeah, I just need somebody that works at Alexander Keith's to confirm that's not an IPA.
And we're not knocking the guy who makes it. I'm sure, we all do it, man.
You can't, that's the one thing people are like, about domestic stuff. It's really impressive what they actually do. Like you got to think on the scale of how many gallons and liters that they're brewing, and it comes out perfect probably 99% of the time. Like it is pretty nuts.
It's a different world, I think. To get into a scale of that size. I'm not even going to start because I don't work on a scale on that size, so I can't even start to pick apart how they do it. But that's what for someone who brews more of a small batch style, I would rather do it this way because it is going to fluctuate. It is going to change. Your ingredients are going to change. Now it's not like wine where your grapes are going to vary from season to season. I'm going to get the same malt that I was getting last year as I'm going to get this year. And so I have a little bit more room for experimenting. But if I brew the same beer and then taste it and go, oh, it tastes a little bit different than it did last time, I mean, like I'm gonna know because I paid that much attention, but really the people who are paying attention, they're not really gonna know. No. You know, the guy that ordered Talk to Me Goose at one location and then went to another one and went, hey, I really liked that beer last time, and gets it. There might be a slight flavor difference, and it could be things that are out of your control, right? It could be the cellar temperature or the fridge temperature of the place that's serving it.
Biggest thing would just be even the gravity, right?
Yeah.
Like luckily for the LCBO, any beers in LCBO, they give you a 0.3% like fluctuation.
Right.
So you could actually be drinking a beer that says 5%, but it can be anywhere between 4.7 and 5.3, which I think is actually nice for them because 9 times out of 10, your gravity's gonna be bang on, but there could just be the one time where, hey, maybe it's down by 1 or 2 points, and they're actually not going to ding you on it.
That's right. Or if something is 8.01%, you want that too. So one of the things that you had mentioned to me earlier in this month, that was a couple of weeks ago, actually. For those of you who don't know Kieran and Top Dog Brewery, you were awarded the correct me if I'm wrong, the up and coming business
young entrepreneur of
the year from
it was the Leamington District Chamber of Commerce.
Leamington District Chamber of Commerce.
So they kind of covers like Leamington, Essex, Kingsville. Yeah. So they
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool to be like acknowledged for everything that's went on for the past 5-6 years and trying to get to this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had to be nominated for it. And after you got nominated, they sent you a big questionnaire to answer a bunch of questions. And then they would award the winner. And when I was there, they had a couple like little montage videos for each time before they did it. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when the first one came up, I was like, crap, I think I won. And at the point, I didn't think I was going to win because I was up against some pretty good people. So I was like, I don't know, it could happen, it could not happen. And I was like, crap, I remember now that when I was doing one of the festivals for Mill Street Night Market in Leamington, someone came by like, oh, we're from the chamber, like we're going to do a little video. And at the time, I was just getting everything ready. It didn't even click to me. And all of a sudden, I sit down, I'm like, oh man, oh crap,
that's me.
I'm like, man, I probably won. All right, what am I going to say? Which I was already kind of thinking like a little bit of a speech just in case to prepare. But I was like, man, I actually got to think about something and go up on stage. And then they played this video, and it was about a minute so long. And the lady in the background was like talking about everything over the past couple of years, and I got a little bit emotional at the time. I was like, okay, now I got to talk. And so I walked the mic, said a couple words, and ended up working out pretty cool. But it was a cool experience.
Really tough when you're put on the spot like that you've got to give this like victory speech. But like you said, you're a little emotional. Yeah. And someone, you're able to. I've been put on the spot a million times. I can fill words, but when you're caught off, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's not something like you can prepare for it, but in a room full of like 2 or so people I haven't really met.
Yeah. I've learned through experience the best victory speech is just I fucking love all of you. That usually
the best I've found like over the years being at Windsor in business, we had to do a lot of presentations.
Yeah.
And all the presentations that were good were just ones that I don't want to say you wing it, but you have different points in your head and you just talk.
Yeah.
Because there's always those ones too where people go up there and they're just reading from the paper the whole time. It's like, this is not a good speech.
A little bit more drone.
Yeah. If you can just go up there and be like, I have a couple points and I'm just going to spitball and keep talking just like how we're doing right now.
Yeah. I get it. Not everyone can do that. Yeah. And sometimes, your craft can take you away from your craft is one thing. The ability to speak in front of a crowd is a totally another crowd. And
just have to picture everybody naked, right?
Well,
right. Wasn't that what they told us back in the day?
I picture myself naked. Wait, you're not supposed to do that? All right, well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Wasn't that an episode of, that was in Family Guy, I think. Yeah, there was an episode of Peter was doing that. And all of a sudden, you picture everybody naked, looks down, and was like, oh, crap. And he's naked.
Awesome. Well, to finish it off on this fine peach milkshake IPA, this is delicious.
Thank you.
I appreciate having you on Brew Talk, Kieran.
Thank you.
It was good to see you. It was good to talk to you. And I look forward to seeing you at festivals in the upcoming future. So
cheers, man.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. And thank you for all spending this hour with us, watching us get a little drunk here on Brew Talk. So
we got a couple more beers to go.
We got a couple more beers to go. And then we get to Brew Talk After Dark.
That doesn't happen.
We don't talk about After Dark.
No.
So once again, thanks for joining us here on Brew Talk, and we'll catch everyone next time. Cheers.